Narration. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning to breaking news. Chinese missiles are flying across the Taiwan Strait. Fighter jets roar over the island. Warships surround Taiwan's ports. Within hours, the world realizes something unthinkable has begun. China has launched an invasion of Taiwan. And suddenly, the biggest geopolitical question of our time becomes real. What would the United States actually do? Would America go to war with China? Would Washington defend Taiwan militarily? Or would the US choose sanctions, diplomacy, and economic pressure instead? Because make no mistake, if China invades Taiwan, the world could be staring at the largest military conflict since World War II. In this video, we're going to break down everything: why Taiwan matters so much, what China's invasion plan might look like, what options America actually has, and whether the US would really risk war with the world's second largest power. This is the question shaping the future of global power, and the answer is far more complicated than most people think. To understand what America would do, we first need to understand something important. Taiwan is not just an island. It is one of the most strategically important places on Earth. The island sits right in the middle of the first island chain, a line of US-aligned territories stretching from Japan to the Philippines. For decades, this chain has acted as a natural barrier, preventing China from projecting military power into the Pacific Ocean. If China controlled Taiwan, that barrier would collapse. Chinese naval and air forces could suddenly operate freely deep into the Pacific. From Washington's perspective, that would completely change the balance of power in Asia. But Taiwan's importance goes even deeper. Taiwan produces over 60% of the world's semiconductors and nearly 90% of advanced chips. Companies like Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company manufacture the chips that power smartphones, artificial intelligence, fighter jets, data centers, supercomputers. Without Taiwan's chip industry, much of the global economy would grind to a halt. So if China took control of Taiwan, Beijing would gain enormous economic leverage over the world. And that is exactly why the United States sees Taiwan as strategically critical. For China, Taiwan is not just about strategy, it's about history. The Chinese government views Taiwan as a breakaway province that must eventually be reunified with the mainland. This view dates back to the end of the Chinese Civil War in 1949. When the communist forces led by Mao Zedong took control of mainland China, the defeated nationalist government fled to Taiwan. Since then, Taiwan has developed into a democratic society with its own military, government, and identity. But Beijing still claims the island as part of China. Today, Chinese leader Xi Jinping has made national reunification a core political goal. For him, bringing Taiwan under Chinese control would be a historic achievement. But accomplishing that goal is incredibly difficult, because invading Taiwan would be one of the most complex military operations in history. A Chinese invasion of Taiwan would likely happen in several phases. Phase 1. Cyber and information warfare. China would likely launch massive cyber attacks targeting Taiwan's infrastructure, power grids, communication networks, military command systems. The goal would be to paralyze Taiwan before physical fighting even begins. Phase 2. Missile strikes. China possesses thousands of ballistic missiles. Many are designed specifically to strike Taiwan's air bases, radar systems, and ports. Within hours, Taiwan's military facilities could face hundreds of precision strikes. Phase 3. Air and naval blockade. Before landing troops, China might attempt a blockade. Chinese warships and submarines could surround Taiwan, cutting off trade and supplies. Remember, Taiwan imports most of its energy and food. A blockade alone could put enormous pressure on the island. Phase 4. Amphibious invasion. Finally, China could attempt a massive amphibious landing across the Taiwan Strait. This is the hardest part. The Taiwan Strait is about 130 kilometers wide. Crossing it under fire would require one of the largest amphibious operations in history, even larger than Normandy landings, and this is where the United States enters the picture. For decades, U.S. policy toward Taiwan has been intentionally unclear. This policy is known as strategic ambiguity. The United States sells weapons to Taiwan and supports its defense. But Washington has never officially promised to fight China if Taiwan is attacked. The goal of this ambiguity is simple. It discourages China from invading, but it also discourages Taiwan from declaring full independence. However, in recent years, American leaders have hinted that the U.S. might intervene militarily. President Joe Biden has repeatedly suggested the U.S. would defend Taiwan if China invaded. But the exact response remains uncertain, because going to war with China would be extraordinarily dangerous. If China invades Taiwan, the United States could choose the most dramatic option: military intervention. This would involve deploying U.S. forces already stationed in the Pacific. For example, United States Navy aircraft carriers, fighter jets based in Japan, submarines operating in the region America could attempt to break a Chinese naval blockade, shoot down invading aircraft, target Chinese warships. But this option carries enormous risk, because it could trigger a direct war between the two largest militaries on Earth, and both nations possess nuclear weapons. Another possibility is indirect support. Instead of fighting China directly, the United States could provide Taiwan with intelligence weapons, cyber support, satellite data. This approach would look similar to the strategy used during the Russian invasion of Ukraine. The U.S. could supply Taiwan with advanced weapons like anti-ship missiles, air defense systems, drones. These weapons could make an invasion extremely costly for China. But the risk would remain that China might retaliate against U.S. forces anyway. Even if the U.S. avoids direct military combat, it could unleash massive economic sanctions. These sanctions could target Chinese banks, technology companies, energy imports, global trade networks. But there's a problem. China's economy is deeply connected to the global system. Sanctioning China could trigger a global economic crisis. Unlike sanctions against Russia, sanctions against China would affect nearly every country on Earth. Supply chains could collapse. Global markets could crash. Which is why many analysts believe economic warfare alone might not stop China. America would not be acting alone. Several key allies might play major roles: Japan, Australia, South Korea, NATO partners. Japan in particular could become central to the conflict because U.S. bases there would likely support operations around Taiwan. If Japan becomes involved, the conflict could rapidly expand into a broader regional war. So what would America actually do if China invades Taiwan? The honest answer is this: no one knows for sure. But what we do know is this: Taiwan sits at the center of the most dangerous geopolitical rivalry of the 21st century. For China, Taiwan represents national unity and strategic power. For the United States, Taiwan represents the balance of power in Asia. If conflict ever erupts in the Taiwan Strait, the consequences would reshape the global order, and the decisions made in Washington and Beijing could define the future of the world. Because the real question isn't just whether China will invade Taiwan. The real question is, if that day comes, will the United States choose war?